That storm hit harder than anyone expected, but what tore through Eliza that night wasn't just wind and rain. It was the sound of a door slamming. A voice colder than the weather telling her to take her child and get out. She had Grace in her arms, 8 years old, fevered. And every step away from that place felt like walking deeper into the kind of darkness you can't light up with a match. She tried everything. Cheap motels, an old friend, even the corner clinic. But no one wanted a woman without papers and a sick kid in tow. By the time they found an abandoned garden shed, under the smell of mildew and cold concrete, Eliza realized she had slid from being tolerated to being invisible. Morning brought no miracles. Voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, offering to scrub floors or pull weeds for a single bowl of soup. At first, there was silence. Then the gate opened. Nicholas Coldwell was everything the papers said. Tall, impeccably dressed, a man carved out of marble. But his eyes, when they met hers, held something like a storm that had never passed. He didn't give her money or pity, just pointed to the sink full of dishes and said, "Start here." Eliza didn't hesitate. While she worked, Grace sat on the kitchen floor, scribbling in quiet. Grace slowly exploring hallways that had been silent for years, Nicholas watching without interfering. Then came the headlines, leaked photos, and venomous comments calling her a con. The source was obvious. Her former sister-in-law, Lisa. The scandal could ruin him. Eliza started packing. Nicholas, instead of letting her vanish, went to war, forcing public apologies, crushing the Parkers' reputation, and making it clear she wasn't the scam they painted her to be. But scars don't fade just because someone fights for you. By the time Monica Parker called Nicholas to admit she'd been wrong, Eliza was already gone. When he found her huddled under the awning of a laundromat, she told him she wouldn't come back. She wouldn't be the reason he lost everything. Kneeling in the rain, Nicholas said quietly, "It's not that I gave you a home. It's that I don't have one without you." Grace's laughter echoed through rooms that had forgotten how to breathe. Nicholas burned cookies on purpose just to make her giggle. And Eliza tended the roses with a kind of peace you only earn after surviving storms. When Dorian, Nicholas's attorney, came to say the Parkers had been publicly disgraced and wanted to make amends, Eliza didn't even flinch. "Grace doesn't need their money," she said. "She needs love. She's found it here." One afternoon, Nicholas took her to an old oak tree in the garden. He planted lilacs there, Lily's favorite flower, and told her his late daughter would have loved Grace like a sister. In the living room, Grace finished a new painting. 3 figures holding hands under a bright blue sky, the word family scrawled above. No speeches followed, just a hand clasped in quiet agreement, a kiss on a little girl's hair, and the unshakable truth that home isn't brick and stone. It's the people who choose to stay, no matter what storms have been or are still coming. Tell me in the comments, because maybe your story is the one someone else needs to survive their storm. The thing about storms is, even after the rain stops, you still keep listening for it, half expecting the wind to slam back through your life again. For weeks after that night under the laundromat awning, Eliza found herself waking up early, just to make sure Grace was still safe in that big house and not shivering somewhere out in the dark. Nicholas, for all his usual reserve, noticed everything now. One quiet morning, Grace wandered into the kitchen dragging her teddy by one arm, eyes half closed, hair wild from sleep. Nicholas was already there, sleeves rolled up, halfway through scrambling eggs. He looked completely out of place in his own kitchen, like a businessman caught in the middle of summer camp duty. But Grace climbed up onto a stool like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're gonna burn them," she mumbled. Nicholas actually laughed, just a small one, but it was enough to make Eliza pause in the doorway. She realized she hadn't heard that sound from him until Grace pulled it out. Life settled into a rhythm, a fragile one. The tabloids lost interest as new scandals replaced old ones. The Parker name kept crumbling, and Grace's cough faded. But underneath it all, Eliza knew she was still a guest in a world that wasn't hers. She never said it out loud, but she could feel that invisible border, that unspoken line between his life and hers. That line showed up one night at dinner. Nicholas had been working late, his tie loosened, eyes shadowed from too many calls. Grace had drawn him a picture, a big sun with 3 stick figures holding hands, and slid it across the table. He studied it for a long moment, then said, almost to himself, I used to think I'd never see something like this again. Eliza didn't press, didn't ask what ghosts had been stirred up in him. But something about the way he touched the paper, gentle, like it could break, told her those memories weren't all warm. Then came the letter. Thick cream-colored paper. A logo embossed in gold. The kind of stationery that screamed old money and colder hearts. It was from Monica. Eliza opened it at the counter while Grace played in the living room. It wasn't just an apology, it was an invitation. A family gathering, Monica called it. She wrote about missing her granddaughter, about regretting past misunderstandings, about wanting to reconnect. Eliza read it twice, not because she believed it, but because she couldn't believe Monica had bothered to send it at all. When Nicholas came in, she slid it over without a word. He read it, frowned, then looked up. "You don't owe her anything," he said, as if he already knew the decision. Eliza nodded slowly. "I know. But Grace," she trailed off, watching her daughter giggle at something her Teddy had said. Grace didn't remember all the sharp edges of that house. But Eliza did, and she wasn't about to let her child walk back into a place where love came with a price tag. She wrote back 3 words. "No, thank you." The days stretched on, warmer now, even when winter tried to bite through the windows. Nicholas started joining them for breakfast instead of eating alone. Grace began leaving her crayons scattered in the living room, confident no one would scold her. Eliza planted herbs in the kitchen window. Little things, but they were signs. The house was no longer holding its breath. Still, part of Eliza stayed cautious. She remembered too clearly how fast security could vanish. And then one afternoon, that caution proved right. It was a Thursday, just after lunch, when a black SUV pulled up outside. Eliza saw it from the upstairs hallway. 2 men in tailored suits stepping out, briefcases in hand. They weren't strangers to Nicholas. She could tell by the way he met them at the door. The conversation was low, tense, with the kind of pauses that carried weight. Grace peeked around the corner, curious. "Who are they, Mom?" Eliza put a hand on her shoulder. "Just friends of Nicholas." She lied. They weren't friends. They were investors, men with money tied to his company. The same company still shaking off the scandal shadow. Eliza couldn't hear every word, but she caught enough. Reputation risk, unnecessary distraction, shareholders' concerns. And then she heard her name. She froze. It was the same tone she'd heard from Monica, from Lisa, from that motel clerk, polite on the surface, poisonous underneath. By the time Nicholas closed the door, she'd already decided. That night, after Grace was asleep, she found him in the study, the firelight throwing shadows across his face. "If they want me gone, say it," she said quietly. "I'm not going to be the reason you lose everything." Nicholas set his glass down slowly, met her eyes, and for a moment the air between them felt as still as the second before a storm breaks. "Eliza, I didn't fight the Parkers just to let you walk away now." His voice was calm, but underneath it was steel. "I don't care what they think. They don't live here. We do. It should have been enough. But old scars don't listen to reason." Eliza looked away, nodding like she agreed, while inside a voice whispered that no place was forever. The test came sooner than either of them expected. 2 days later, the local paper ran a front-page story. Millionaire Coldwell rejects investor demands, chooses loyalty over business. The article praised his personal integrity, but the message between the lines was clear. Nicholas had chosen sides, and it might cost him. When Eliza read it over her morning coffee, she felt something she hadn't in years, guilt and gratitude, tangled together so tightly she couldn't separate them. She found Nicholas in the garden, sleeves rolled up, dirt on his hands as he tended the lilacs under the oak. Without thinking, she walked over and took the spade from him. "You shouldn't have to do all this alone," she said. He looked at her for a long moment, then simply said, "I'm not." Spring came early that year. The house smelled of fresh bread one day, paint the next, as Nicholas let Grace help him redo one of the guest rooms. They called it the Sunshine Room, because Grace had painted a huge yellow circle on one wall before they covered it with soft cream. Eliza laughed more in those weeks than she had in years. But on the first truly warm afternoon, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a photograph, Eliza and Grace outside the Parker mansion, soaked in the storm, the night they'd been thrown out. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Never forget where you belong." She didn't show Nicholas. She burned it in the kitchen sink, watching the edges curl and blacken, the ash swirling away like it had never existed. Because she knew where she belonged now, and it wasn't in anyone's pity or their judgment or their family that only remembered her when it suited them. That evening, Nicholas read to Grace by the fire, a fairy tale about a queen who had nothing but a crown made of wildflowers. Eliza sat nearby, sewing a button back on his shirt. She listened to his voice, to Grace's laughter, to the crackle of the fire, and realized the storm inside her had finally gone quiet. Sometimes you don't get back the life you lost. Sometimes you build a better one from the pieces that survived. And that's exactly what they were doing.